April jobs numbers came in higher than expected, with the economy adding 115,000 jobs. And while that number looks strong on paper, it leaves out the fact that a record number of men and women have left the labor force altogether. If you exclude the pandemic, the share of men in the workforce is at its lowest point since 1948. And for the millions of Americans, the economic story that they're living right now has much more to do with the price of filling up their gas tank. According to the University of Michigan, consumer sentiment has hit a record low, even lower than it was during the Great Recession in 2008. And as Americans struggle to afford basic expenses, listen to how White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett is describing the economy.
The consumer is really firing on all cylinders, just like the corporate sector you're seeing in the earnings reports. And they're doing that because they have so much more money in their pockets. Credit card spending is through the roof. They're spending more on gasoline, but they're spending more on everything else, too.
Yep. You heard that correctly. A senior Trump official pointing to soaring credit card spending as evidence that the economy is thriving. As Pod Save America's Jon Favreau joked online, we must consider the possibility that Kevin Hassett is secretly working for the Democrats. Joining us now is Congressman Joe Morelle of New York, a member of the House Appropriations Committee. Congressman, thanks for joining us this morning. What's your reaction to Kevin Hassett and his commentary on the state of the economy?
Well, he is clearly one of two things. He's either completely uninformed about what's going on in America, or he simply knows that what he's telling is something that is a lie, because every single day Americans are dealing with this issue. I was putting gas in my car 2 days ago. A woman came up to me at the car behind me and just went on for 2 minutes about how hard this was in Trump's America, and you hear it every day. So, I mean, it's clearly, this is the kind of ridiculous thing that the president would say. Unfortunately, you now hear it from just about everybody who works in the White House or the administration, is telling people what they're experiencing in real time doesn't exist, and instead they should believe something that they know not to be true. It's absurd.
That audience of one aspect of the Trump presidency and just being his ally is always well and operating. Hassett, they are spending more on gasoline. That is correct. Exxon CEO Darren Woods talked about that. He also talked about if we can expect it to go down quickly, like the president's been saying. Listen to this, Congressman.
I think it's obvious to most that if you look at the unprecedented disruption in the world supply of oil and natural gas, the market hasn't seen the full impact of that yet.
Two things are true here. It is that the president of the United States does not actually have a lot of control over how high gas can be typically, right? That we're not a part of OPEC that sets oil and all of that. However, when you go to war in Iran and they close the strait and the oil can't get through, that's 20% of the world's oil, then there is an impact. And when you're listening to the CEO of Exxon saying those prices aren't going down, meaning their prices aren't going to come down either, the American people are going to be dealing with this through the year, at the very least, it seems.
Yeah, it points out two things, actually. The first is that you're right. The president has managed to disrupt the flow of oil around the world. There's a crude price that is a global price. This is a global market. So for all of his talk about increasing supply in the United States, it doesn't really have as much of an impact on the world's oil supply as he would like. But he's disrupted all that with the war. The second thing is, I think businesses, and even in the petroleum industry, are leery of doing anything in such a chaotic, disruptive environment. And the president changes his mind literally multiple times in the same hour on the same day about the same subject. So if you're going to invest capital, if you're going to invest labor, if you're going to invest equipment, it'd be nice to know that what you started out with as some assumptions in the morning were still going to be valid at the end of the day, but they're not. So I hear this from manufacturers, I hear from small businesses every single day that the president's chaos, his recklessness, is stopping even the ability for small and large businesses to grow in the United States. You see that reflected, I think, in the fact that we've lost nearly 90,000 manufacturing jobs in the United States since so-called Liberation Day. Clearly what the president would like not to have happened. And so in his mind, instead of adjusting, changing his direction altering what he does. He just engages in this strange mindset where he just tells you that something's true when it clearly is not.
Congressman, I know that you said that you're hearing from constituents about the price of oil. The president is saying that, the cost of oil at $102 a barrel is a, quote, small price to pay for getting rid of a nuclear weapon in Iran. Do you think that the voters in New York, especially, maybe outside of your district, voters in the swing districts in New York, are they actually going to vote against Republicans because of what's happening here?
Well, I think the president thinks so, which is why he's going through such extraordinary efforts to make sure that the verdict of the American people isn't heard in November. That's why he and, frankly, his cronies on the Supreme Court have completely upended the electoral map in the last week, because they know that if they were to listen to American voices and hear from the American people, that the verdict would be pretty bad for them. And so the president doesn't want to hear that. So what's he do? It's what he always does. He either changes the reality or changes the game and cheats. I would not have wanted to play baseball or checkers with him as a kid, because in the middle of the game, he would have changed the rules or wiped the board off or picked up his ball and gone home. But I think the American people are going to render a verdict in November. And the president and the Republicans who march lock, stock behind him are going to be shocked at what they're going to find, because Americans are struggling right now at the kitchen table. They're struggling at work. They're struggling to pay for kids' child care. They're struggling to deal with aging parents and how they deal with them, how to deal with health care costs. I mean, it's a mess, and the president is not a serious man.
Congressman, you talked about changing the rules and changing the game. Republicans have also done that when it comes to mid-decade redistricting. This all started when President Trump told Texas lawmakers to find him 5 seats. They did that and set off this entire back and forth. The Virginia Supreme Court struck down a voter-backed redistricting plan that is both a blow to Democrats and kind of the process that we are operating within. When you, as someone who is in New York, it's reported that you were involved in the kind of pushing the redistricting effort there. When you're looking at how Democrats and Republicans have been operating, that Republicans have been doing this over and over again, that even just this week you had Louisiana pause its primaries so that they could change the game and change the seats, as you said. When you look at that, what should Democrats be doing next, especially in New York?
Well, I'll tell you, we're fighting back. We're a little limited in New York because we cannot do mid-decade redistricting under our state constitution. So I was asked by Leader Jeffries to go to Albany and meet with legislators and the governor earlier this week, which I did. I'm a former state legislator, and I have a lot of relationships. So urge them to begin the process, which is a 2-year process, to change the state constitution, because we have to fight back. I mean, what's happened, and it is astonishing, Eugene, you just mentioned it. In California, Virginia, Democrats changed district lines by asking their public whether they wanted that to happen. 2 referendum which passed. And, of course, in Virginia, apparently the courts in Virginia think it's too late to change lines, so they're willing to completely reject the will of the Virginia voters. But in southern states, in the past week, state legislatures, by fiat, have changed district lines that will likely lead to the elimination of black representation throughout the South. And they just did it. Doesn't matter to them. And to your point out, Louisiana's already in the middle of their voting. They've already had the primary. They're in their runoff stage, and the governor unilaterally said, no, we're going to follow the Supreme Court, which, by the way, made the worst decision since the Taney Court came up with Dred Scott. I mean, the Roberts Court will go down in history as one of the most racist courts in American history, and it is disgraceful. That's being respected, but the will of voters of Virginia and in California are being challenged by Republicans. It's really unbelievable. So New York and other states, we're going to have to fight back because there's no alternative at this point.
Congressman, really quickly, we're out of time, but you mentioned that New York has to change its constitution. There are 2 ways to amend the constitution in New York to allow for something like this. Do you think that you guys should amend the constitution and allow for mid-decade redistricting in New York? Yes,
there's really one way. You have to pass a provision in 2 different legislatures. There needs to be an intervening election, which is why we can't do it this year. We would need to wait for final passage and then a referendum by people in 2027. So by the 2020 election, I think you'll see new lines in New York.